To live a fulfilling life, it might be time to ditch the bucket list for good. As a society, we've come to believe that you should work 30 or 40 years before you're able to fully retire. And then you have the opportunity to relax and pursue all the things that you've dreamed of and have been waiting to do your entire life. So, retirement has become this ultimate goal on the horizon where you finally get to do all of those bucket list experiences. So, it's basically burned into us. Save as much as you can for as long as you can, and then you'll be able to retire as early as possible. But have you asked yourself what would happen if you didn't get to cross all those experiences off your list? I'm Amber Knips, a wealth advisor at Sweet Financial Partners, located in Fairmont and Jackson, Minnesota. And I specialize in working with high net worth individuals as they navigate life's biggest transitions, both expected and unexpected. We believe everyone has the right to realize that their dreams are possible, and we use that as a focus when we work with clients and help them plan for the future. I had a client pass away several years ago, and she was just a spectacular person, and she was way too young. And I want to share a piece of her obituary, which I think of often. Watching the way she put others before herself, she worked tirelessly to make sure that the people who were around her were loved and supported. And she focused on what was good. She taught her children more words than she could ever hope to. She cherished her family deeply. She loved the times when her family could get together and took great care to ensure her family knew love. She lived every day to the fullest. Her loving spirit and dedication to her family will not be forgotten. How powerful is hearing that? The thing is, with her, I've had so many conversations about what retirement would look like. She had so many places she wanted to travel and see, friends all over the United States that she wanted to visit that were so important to her. And unfortunately, she got sick and she didn't get to do any of those things she'd been building towards, which is why I think it's so important to shift the conversation, to what's the most important to you, and are you making decisions today, right now, to get you closer to your goals? Today, I want to go through some of the things for you to consider as you plan out what you want to accomplish in life and help you get closer to that mindset of balancing your dreams and work. So the first consideration is ditch that bucket list. And what I mean by that is recognizing that our lives are a journey. And unfortunately, we can't control when you reach that true destination of your expiration date. So no longer delaying happiness to this date way off in the future. Is finding the balance now of having some of those experiences in addition to managing the responsibilities and duties of your day-to-day life. So I want to be clear that ditching the bucket list doesn't negate retirement planning as a concept. Instead, it changes the focus of retirement not being that magical trigger point to start checking items off our bucket list. And that's key. So rather than delaying our most desirable experiences towards, the end of our life expectancy potentially, bringing more of those experiences forward. So thinking more of just bucket list experiences too. It's really about living your vision and your best life in all facets. So what do you want to be? What do you want to learn? What kind of mark do you want to leave? And what are your health and wellness goals? And all of those need to be incorporated into your financial plan. And oftentimes those are maybe things you don't necessarily think of, but they're really important because for most people, they're not like, gosh, I want to have X amount of money when I retire. That's not a conversation I have a lot. It's, I want to have done all of these things and lived a really great life and have a legacy left behind. So thinking about pulling more of those experiences sooner so that you can have a more rewarding life versus waiting. So it's a great time to mention, as you think through that, if you don't have a copy of our new book, click the link below where you can request a free copy. We've had so many people comment on how that's helped them, really think through the process of what's important to them and getting that list of things together. So then the fun part happens of having that list of all the things you want to accomplish and then figuring out how to make that gradually happen versus missing out on some of those things by waiting too long. So the next piece is creating a dream board. And at Sweet Financial, we love the idea of a dream board. And we have that in our office in a pretty high traffic area where we can see not only our own dreams, but what's important to everybody else in the office too. And I really encourage everyone to do the same so that when you're having some of those tough days at work, tough days just in general, you keep in mind what's important to you and ultimately what you're working towards. So the list of things that you want to do and accomplish or be remembered for, put them in picture form and get them all in one place. Put it in a place where you're going to look at it every day, and every big decision you make, you're keeping those different things in mind. Oftentimes, a question you may have is, with a volatile investment environment like we saw in 2022, how has that affected your retirement date? And maybe that's something that you've been wondering about, is how does this affect your long-term plan, and being nervous about, do you have to push things off even more? So if you haven't gone through our dream architect process, you may have feelings of frustration and anxiety about how much longer it's going to take you to reach those magical golden years. So it makes the concept of ditching the bucket list even more relevant today. It could be a great time to look at, what are you missing out on that you're saving for later? And what adjustments could you do today to create even more possibilities in the future? And the best part of that process is working through all the what if scenarios and looking at what adjustments you could make and the impact that that could make. It's really powerful. I just worked through this with a client the other day. We adjusted the plan that we had put together for him, and he was able to get flexibility at his job and work more remotely. So for him, that completely changed his thoughts on retirement and what that looked like. He was able to do so many more things now while making income to help supplement those things. So he's willing to postpone his retirement for a while because he has this happy mix for him. So something he didn't have when he was younger, working that typical 8 to 5. So understanding it's not necessarily all in or all out like it used to be, and which is a great lead into the next point that I wanted to touch on, is, should you be saving differently for a different type of retirement? There are alternative different types of retirement. It's not just the save as much as you can, retire and never go back. And considering the alternative types of retirement could substantially change the types of advice that you need. And which is why enlisting the help of a wealth advisor can be a really valuable asset to see exactly what's possible. There's no cookie cutter magic number that everyone needs to have a set amount of money to live by to have this successful retirement. So maybe you're considering a semi-retirement, or a retirement where you take, temporary breaks and you get to spend time down south, or, more considerable amount of time traveling, but then you get to go back. So your retirement savings might look different and thus be invested a little bit differently as well. So for instance, if those leisure periods are going to be short and temporary, followed by returning to work, and maybe overall this will take a little bit longer and you'll retire a little bit later, you might not need quite as much long-term retirement savings. At the very, very end, when your travel's no longer desired, or maybe you just can't travel as much, then you would need a bigger chunk. So really figuring out what's the most important to you and then working that strategy in versus just trying to push as much for later on. And another point that I wanted to mention too is recognizing that retirement isn't necessarily the goal at the end of the rainbow for everybody. For those who are working, especially in a job that they don't really enjoy, the idea of an extended retirement of leisure sounds highly appealing, right? But the problem is that not everyone enjoys that once they get there. And, especially if you were a person that was always go, 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 you might find that once you get there, you're bored. And it's no longer enjoyable to do some of those things that felt like a relief when you were working. So that's why we talk so much about focusing on, not only what you're retiring from, but what you're retiring to. So having a clear picture of what it looks like And I can't stress how important that is. So it's a mix of the fun stuff, but also, what are you going to do every day to feel fulfilled? It might not be realistic to travel the entire year. So, what are you going to do to fill that downtime in between? And really, the biggest takeaway is that just because the normal, typical retirement where you save as much as possible and one day you get to have this amazing, beautiful, flexible retirement, that might not be best suited for you. And we're noticing that more and more. We believe that everyone has the right to realize that their dreams are possible. And if that's something important to you, that's a really great conversation to start having and planning for. So if you're trying to find that balance of dreams and work, you absolutely need to pick up a copy of our most recent book, Dream Architecture: Build a Retirement Beyond What's Possible, which you can request a free copy by clicking the link below.